Welcome. We have Tom Crumpton and Brent Pennington here, and we're going to talk about different issues with business brokerage and commercial real estate brokerage and the things we see on the street. And one of the topics we picked for today is the silver tsunami that is certainly a factor in the world of small and medium sized businesses, but is also a factor in commercial real estate as well. And in that, we have demographics that are driving ownership transition in those businesses and a refinancing wall and the repricing of capital in commercial real estate. Tom, do you want to tell us a little bit about this term silver tsunami?
Sure. So, about 41% of all privately held companies in America, that's almost half, are owned by baby boomers. The average age right there is 61 to 80. That's the range. The average is 70. So we're at a point where 70%, about half the businesses in America are owned by people in a group where the average age is 70. And because a lot of those people have silver hair and they're going to be selling these because there is a deadline, pun intended, it's called the silver tsunami. It's dollar volumes and volumes of businesses to be sold in the next 4 to 6 years like we've never seen before. To give you an example, for the next 4 to 5 years, every year, business sales, privately held companies, is expected in volume to equal commercial real estate sales. That's never happened. That's never been close. But because all of these people are 68, 70, 72, and they've held on longer than a lot of them should have, hoping things get better, they're either going to sell or their estate is going to sell, right? The family's going to sell it for them.
I think that's a good question. Just because they're older, as some business people just get worn out. But there are also some other reasons why people want or need to sell. Do you want to touch on a few of those?
Sure. There are times where the 40-year-old gets burnt out. There's times where something changes in somebody's life and the family has the business and there's a divorce or something. There's all kinds of normal reasons for businesses to sell. And those are going to continue. The percentage and numbers of those businesses that have sold every year for the last decade won't change. What's going to change is all those silver tsunami qualifiers, the people that end the baby boomers, that are going to be selling because they are done. They no longer can do it, or they're just fed up with it. And once they get with a broker, a professional, and they realize that this is it, right? If they're thinking, I'm going to grow it to X, and they realize it's going to take them a decade to get there, then they're done. They're better off selling the business, take the money, invest that money in something, and let it grow to get the number they were trying to get.
Yeah, you made a good point just a minute ago that they're either, if they don't sell, somebody's going to sell it for them in their estate. And I see in commercial real estate, oftentimes it is the heirs that want to sell the commercial real estate because they all of a sudden have this new load, if you will, on their plate that they're not qualified for, or they just don't want to deal with it. And I think in commercial real estate, it's easier, or it's maybe easier to survive that with selling it, with the heirs selling it, and still achieve a close to fair market value than with a business. Because aren't there things in a business that would start going downhill when the founder's not there?
You're absolutely right. And I'll go back for a second. So if those heirs inherit a commercial real estate building, 50,000 square feet, it has a lease, it has an income, and somebody's in there, and it's paying for itself. And whoever the tenant is, they're writing a check, they're paying it, they're keeping up the utilities, they're keeping up all the things you're supposed to be keeping up. So they can just keep up with the bookkeeping and let that appreciate if they want, or they can sell it and take the money and run. You can't do that in a business. When the manager's gone, when the owner's gone, it goes downhill quick. Then there's reasons for that. So Billy dies, And his industry finds out pretty quick, right? Everybody starts talking. So now his competitors are calling his customers. His competitors are calling his managers looking to hire him, going, hey, he's gone. Come work for us. So it can go down, and it does drastically, quickly.
Do you also see a difference in a commercial real estate and a business desire to sell as well? Since a business is more hands-on, I think it would be a greater desire for a business owner to want to free up their time and money. Money in businesses can be very illiquid. Certainly the wealth factor, if there's been a great deal of wealth and equity created, do owners think about selling to be able to travel and spend time with grandkids and do other things, maybe a new hobby?
That's always on the back of their list, right? Of, okay, after I sell, I'll do this. But very seldom have I seen somebody sell their business because they want to go do that. If the business is going well enough, the business can run and they can do that, right? If you have management in place and you've done things over the years and you've built a nice enough business, you don't have to be there every day. You just have to have everybody know you could stop in on a regular occasion to keep everybody working, keep everybody honest. It's more of selling the business is more of a really bad divorce or a car you just don't want anymore. You can hear an owner's tone when he says, I'm done. I'm ready to sell. That's different than somebody saying, I might want to sell. What kind of number do you think you get? He's just looking for a number. He has no interest in selling. Selling a business is you're done with that wife. You're done with that car. You don't want this thing anymore. You're over. Get me out of here.
So in commercial real estate, one of the big factors at this point is often debt. Almost all income producing commercial real estate today is levered, and some very highly levered. But I don't think that's as big of a piece of the equation in a business wanting to sell. I don't think they're going to be as levered up on their assets as a commercial real estate. Do you think it's as big of a factor? Because debt's gone up in the last several years. The
No,
cost of debt.
you're exactly right on that. Buildings everybody's borrowed on, and interest rates were low, so the values went up. They took out some equity. It didn't happen in the businesses. Most businesses I see have zero to little debt. If I walk into an office of a building that's been there for 20 plus years, the owner's over 50, and got 60, 80 employees out there, I know without going in his office, it's going to be an old desk, old files, old chairs. He doesn't have an $8,000 brand new desk sitting there. It just doesn't happen. I've lost track of the times where I've walked in and there were two file cabinets, right? The two drawers about 3 feet off the floor and a door on top. That was the desk, right? You can see where the hinges were and where the door. And he's running a $5 million company downstairs, but he's putting the money into the business. They almost have no debt, and it's because the 50, 60, 70-year-old guy, they were taught not to have debt. So when they bought a machine that cost $500,000, they paid it down fast. They didn't want that interest on it. But the older the company, the older the business, the more blue collar it is, the less debt it has. That's what the owner's done. He might have an $80,000 brand new Yukon or a Cadillac, and he might have borrowed it all because it was a 2% loan or 1% loan at the dealer. But for the business, no, almost everything's paid down.
So an owner faces I guess, a life wall, if you will, where in commercial real estate, it would often be a debt maturity wall that would be faced. So let's look at in this as there's usually an expectation gap between seller and buyer, or we should say seller and reality. In the world of commercial real estate, that expectation has been shaped in the last 5 years-ish by the amount of money that's been chasing commercial real estate. And prices have escalated tremendously to some extent because of the debt cost increase that has pulled back. How do you see that? How does that affect the business owner who wants to sell?
If it's his building and doesn't have that much of an effect, as long as he doesn't charge the new person higher rent than he's paying himself, because that would mess up his profitability, his EBITDA. If he owns the building, then it's a great opportunity to sell both at the same time, because with the SBA and certain funding things, you can get your amortization set out 2.5 times longer. So that makes your payments that much less. Just makes it more sense there. But and I know the times you're talking about, there was a point where industrial went from $50-$60 a foot to where it hung for decades, to $250 a foot. It went up 5 and 6 times. The business value didn't. The business is still worth what the profitability is times some type of multiple. And that's all based on what can it pay for itself, right? If somebody's going to buy it, borrow some money against it, you've got a debt service coverage ratio. It can only handle so much. It didn't go up with the building.
So do you think there's more emotion? I feel like there's more emotion in a business sale than a commercial real estate sale.
Absolutely. And I'll go into that. So I've walked into a room where when we walked in, Billy owned the building. When we walked out, Jim owned the building. I got a check. There was no emotion, right? Now, I sat at a table where a man sold his company and he's getting enough money to send his grandkids to whatever college they want, which is important because he didn't have any money to go to college and he didn't have money yet to send any of his kids to college. But this is affecting his grandkids and it's life-changing money. Now, if you sell it to somebody that's coming in legally in America on a visa, an E2, an EB5, at the end of this closing, they are permanent residents. They get to stay in America. Mm-hmm. So that's much more emotional. Tears on the table from both sides.
I suspect too, I know, with a business, it's more of emotional decision or more of an emotional, it really becomes a fabric of who somebody is, much more than there may be a trophy property here and there. But for the most part, in commercial real estate, a property is inventory. It's just what someone buys, sells, or relies on for revenue. And I think in the business sale area, it's often part of the family, so to speak.
It's more important than the family a lot of times. Honest to God, it is, because he spent more time here. There's times where an owner, he wants to sell a business, needs to sell a business, but doesn't really want to part with it because that's been so much of his life and who he is. Like I said, he didn't sponsor the Little League team. His company sponsored the Little League team. So they come to his company every year for another check because he's sponsoring the Little League and the basketball and all the things he does. But he's spending more time in this facility than he has at home, right? He's spending 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Sometimes weekends. When he gets to the house on a weeknight, he goes home, right? Maybe a beer, an hour or two, and he goes to sleep. This is where he spent most of his time. This is what he built. He moved into a house and they had 2 kids and their kids grew up. The business went from 10,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet and 100 employees. And he's responsible for all those people and all those families feeding those kids. So yeah, it's a lot of
do you specifically try to or have a framework to manage that emotional component?
Yes. There's things you do up front. There's things you coach. There's things you teach. There's things you bring to the table that aren't going to be pleasant to talk about, but you talk about them. You let them know what the expectations are. You walk them through the process, and you let them know as we get closer to closing, you're going to fight to close. You're going to not want to. You're going to argue. You're going to start figuring out ways to not do it. I once had a guy call and tell me, I really can't make that inspection today. Can you call those people and tell them to come another day? And I'm like, what else you got today that's worth $6.2 million? What are you doing today that's nothing? And you keep your butt right there. If nobody's in the hospital, if nobody's dying, and whatever you're going to go do, and it was something silly, but he was just looking for a way to put it off. And it happens.
I once had a small business I was trying to sell, and the buyer was touring the facility with me, and I made the mistake of leaving him alone with the owner for maybe 2 minutes. And in those 2 minutes, the old owner told him that good luck because the day he buys it, everybody's quitting. And needless to say, that was the end of that sale. And he did just that. Began his descent into really sabotaging the business to make it unsellable.
Yeah, and the first one or two times that you don't realize unless somebody's coached you, and I didn't have that this is coming and this is why. And then once you realize it, you start looking for those and recognizing those little things. Like you said, hey, everybody's going to quit. No, they're not. I've done this 30 years. I've never had a mass exodus of employees on a sale. But again, that's a coaching process and letting the buyer and seller know how this is going to trend, what's going to happen, and what needs to be said on that first day after closing, and what you need to say, why you need to say it. And these are employees. They work for the company. If Bill owns it or Jim owns it, they're just want somewhere they can go from Monday to Friday, know they get a check on Friday. That's really what they're looking for.
Right.
They're not going to quit.
Most of the few businesses that I've sold, they've been to owner operators. And most owner operator buyers, in my opinion, just want a way to have a facility to make income. They want to get out of their day job or whatever, and what they think is going to be freedom may or may not be the case, but have their own control over their world, so to speak.
No, a lot of it is true, and like you said, what they think or it may or may not happen. If I think a buyer is a little sketchy, I let them know you're going to get, once you get in here, you get to work half days, 12 hours each. Because if he's going to scoot, if he's not going to close, I want to know it early. Let's get rid of him early and bring another buyer in. And that's it. When you own your business, you don't get to go home at 5 o'clock with everybody else if there's a glitch right? You're the problem solver.
Yeah, and so in this silver tsunami that I think statistically it's there, it just exists. What do you think makes a business unsellable?
Terrible books and records and just a seller who's not honest. That's it. If you've got some kind of records and you're decent as a human being, as an owner, most businesses are sellable. At some point, they are. The things that don't work are bad books because now nobody trusts anybody and you don't know what really went on. And you've met this guy, right? You shake his hand, you got slime in your own hand, or it's just a bad feeling. Every question comes back with a different answer except to that question, where you just go, no, I'm just going to walk away from this one.
Or they don't have financials readily available. And when they do, they make up a story of how they don't tie to their tax returns because all that's bogus anyway.
Yeah, those are pretty much unsellable, except for the guy that fell off the turnip truck into a mound of cash. If the guy's not smart enough to know what the bad books and records are, and if somehow he got cash because nobody's going to fund it, he's not borrowing money on it, but those are rare.
Speaking of that, certainly in commercial real estate, the days of rolling up with your own cash are just, they're not, it doesn't exist today for the most part. Same way in small businesses, unless it's like a company rolling up smaller companies to form a larger organization. Is SBA still the best bet to finance a business?
Absolutely, for a lot of reasons. So anything under 10 million or around 10 million and under, because you can scoot that number a little bit, SBA is the way to go. The reasons for that are they can finance it longer than a normal bank will, because there's not a lot of assets here, right? So the government backing that loan will give you a 10-year amortization, where your local bank without an SBA connection, they're only going to loan you on what the asset value is, which is nowhere near what the business value is. And it's going to be a 3 or 4 year loan, and it just won't work. The other thing is, it puts the buyers' minds at ease, is the bank has their own audit team. The bank goes through the financials. The bank gets the letter from the seller saying that they can get their tax returns from the IRS. The bank runs all the numbers. They do projections, right? They work with the buyer to do a business plan with forecasting, and the rates are decent. 1-2 years later, you can pay them off without a penalty. So they're absolutely the best way, because buyers' biggest concern is this all real? Can I do this, but is it real? Not too many SBA lenders goof that up.
Yeah, because they have skin in the game, so to speak.
They do.
Tom, I think it's been great for us to visit about the silver tsunami in business sales and in commercial real estate, because it is real. A lot of these post-World War II startups, and even in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, are now the time that they need to move on. And it was a great first podcast, and we'll continue this kind of thought. Do you have anything you want to end up with?
Just a question if you wanted to wrap it up here, or you want to talk a little bit about the debt ceiling coming in simultaneously, or do that in a separate podcast.
Oh, let's do that next week.
Okay. There's plenty of things with our history and our experience on these two topics we can talk about and answer any kind of questions on.
We're not going to run out of topics, I don't believe. All right. Good to talk to you.
All right.